Welcome to the Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast, hosted by Dawn Tura, CEO and President of SIG.
Well, folks, welcome back to the podcast series. Now, today, I get to welcome to the studio two very, very good friends of mine. But people, not only are they good friends of mine, but you need to have them in your Rolodex or your contact list, because these are two gentlemen you need to know if you don't. So let me start off by introducing Tarek Alaruri, and he's the COO and co-founder at Fairmarkit, the intelligent sourcing platform. Prior to co-founding Fairmarkit, he started his career in sales at a logistics company. And despite his success that landed him as the President's Club, he wanted to be intellectually stimulated and moved on to Turbonomic, formerly VM Turbo, where he led a sales team. While at Turbonomic, he met his co-founder, Kevin Frechette, and the rest is history. And I can't wait to get into more about Fairmarkit. So welcome, Tarek.
Thank you for having me. That was quite an intro. So I didn't even know that existed.
Well, we've been studying up on you. But with him is Greg Tennyson. Now, Greg, you probably know him. I don't know if you know him as the SVP of Strategy and Procurement at Fairmarkit, but he's a former CPO and Vice President of Corporate Services at VSP Global. And prior to, he was the CPO and VP of Source to Settle at Salesforce.com and Oracle Corporation. He also has a master's in management from St. Mary's College of California with professional credentials from SIG, NAPM, and NCMA. He was our 2018 Hall of Fame inductee into the SIG and 2019 CPO of the Year by Ardent Partners. So, Greg, thank you for joining us.
Don, thank you. Appreciate you inflating my ego. Much appreciated.
I've been a big fan of yours for years. But folks, before we get started, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. And then when we return, we're going to hear from our two wonderful guests.
What is Sig University? We are an inclusive, internationally recognized university whose mission is to advance the procurement profession while enabling students to transform their careers through our world-class certifications. Sig University offers industry-recognized certifications programs, each offering a unique set of competencies and skills that sourcing and risk professionals need to be successful. The programs provide advanced training in subjects like strategic sourcing, supplier management, third-party risk management, intelligent automation, and more. Sig University is committed to academic excellence, which is why our students are trained alongside an international cohort, engage in discussion forums, and learn from senior practitioner faculty who leverage their deep industry experience with real-world case studies. Why Sig University? It was created originally at the request of SIG members. We knew there was a lot of training out there, but nothing designed around the ever-evolving skills and competencies that the modern sourcing and risk professional needs. The program was created through collaborating with dozens of industry experts to create a curriculum that is bold, fresh, and applicable to this day and age. If you're looking to advance your knowledge and your career, join us at SIG University.
Well, welcome back. So I am excited because the title of today's podcast is the Magical CPO. Now, I always knew they were magical, but let's just sort of position what that means. According to Gartner, only 22% of procurement leaders, or CPOs, have a long-term digital strategy. Gartner and CEB report from 2018, arguably the data is still relevant given the COVID pause. Interesting. Few, if any, CPOs have invested in advanced technologies like AI or artificial intelligence or machine learning. According to Deloitte's CFO Insights from September 21, CFOs are demanding their procurement teams do more with less. Translated, CFOs expect CPOs, based on the survey, to deliver on 77% reduced cost, 68% say you have to enhance risk mitigation, 64% say you have to deliver on digital transformation, 55% say deliver improved CSR outcomes. And Tailspin is a quick win with proven business outcomes. I would like to start with maybe, Greg, you could give me a definition of what is the magical CPO that you're seeing these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now that I'm on the enlightened side, on the industry side, I am discovering a new perspective. There are those CPOs that are visionaries, that understand digital, that walk the talk, if you will, and know how to make the right investments. What I'm finding, and the results are somewhat disappointing, is you have what I call the technology laggard. As you had mentioned, 78%, just the inverse of the 22, 78% don't have a digital strategy, a long-term digital strategy. And it's rather disappointing given the expectations coming from the CFO. The C-suite is expecting procurement to deliver. And certainly there's an opportunity. Tarek, I'd love to get your perspective, what you're seeing as well.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say that I feel like Dwyane Wade playing on the Heat back in the day with Shaq. I'm joined by greatness here. So I'm lucky to work with somebody like Greg. And, one thing that I'm personally seeing, or I see our customers, is either you can be the innovator or someone else is going to innovate for you. And, today our customers like BP, we have a video with them. Their team has to do more with 50% less people. And so either the procurement team is going to innovate or the C-suite is going to innovate. And that's usually the CIO or the digital transformation team. So really, it's kind of like you're leaving your fate up into somebody else's hands. And I've never worked at the scale of an organization like Greg has at VSP, but I can only imagine, when I go to the DMV to see what it's like at some of those bigger organizations. I kind of imagine it's someone operates like that once you get to the scale of these huge monolithic companies. And so, I think if you're trying to build your brand, build who you are, not only from a result standpoint, but also looking at the future and looking at a 5-year time horizon to prove that you're valuable in the seat, you need to start looking at digital technologies. And what that really means is letting technology solve a problem for you instead of trying to throw people at a problem.
So Greg, though, you were one of those CPOs who always embraced the latest and greatest. You were always looking at technology. You never stopped. And we could always introduce you to the up and coming companies, and you would give us a really good, honest, assessment of them. So where did that passion come to make you one of those magical CPOs? And what is lacking in other CPOs that don't get it yet?
I've always considered, and let me pause, I appreciate the Shaq reference. First time I've been referred to as Shaq. So I've always considered the art of the possible. And it was actually inbred in me by CFO at the time at Oracle, Jeff Henley. The expectation was we delivered more with less. The expectation was that we continue to challenge technology, to view it as an enabler to drive efficiencies, productivity improvement, a better user experience. So it started honestly back at Oracle, working for Jeff Henley, and it kind of unfolded there from the Salesforce experience. You just have to challenge the status quo. Individuals that become complacent in the role, that don't challenge process, technology, or their people from a skill set perspective, are quickly jettisoned or pushed to the wayside. So always consider the art of the possible to understand how technology in this case can deliver better outcome, better business outcome.
Yeah, but Greg, you had a very dedicated group of employees who really looked up to you. And one of the things, Tarek, you mentioned do more with less, and Greg, you mentioned it too. While we're doing more with less people, we're not doing the mundane, boring, horrible work that no smart person really wants to do. So it's the right thing to do to automate as many processes, to add AI and ML where possible, because if you have smart people, they don't want to do dumb work. So Tarek, can you take us a little bit into the first time I met you guys? I was so excited. I believe it was Barry Wiegler and I were doing a little tour of some emerging technologies and came across Fairmarkit, and you guys were the very first ones who used AI and ML to crawl through the Tailspin, which is the least sexiest spend that we have. And yet, it terrifies me and keeps me up at night because we have no idea what's in our tail and how much risk is there. So tell me, why did you guys start on your journey looking at the Tailspin? Because that's what turned me on with you guys immediately.
Yeah, so to unbundle that a little bit, when customers ask us what Tailspin is, because everybody has a different definition. And I always use the definition of you strip out your FTEs, your full-time employees, you strip out travel and entertainment, you strip out legal, and you strip out your office leases. For most companies, whether it's indirect or direct, depending on the organization, that's Tailspin. It's spend that you don't want to throw resources at or are not strategic vendors. So that means, you're buying and selling from that relationship. And, the problem we tried to solve was that no two companies pay the same price. And when you dig in, it's not like, Greg's team at Oracle, Salesforce, VSP, they don't know they're not getting a good price. Like more times than not, they're like, yeah, this is definitely not the best price, but, we don't have the bandwidth or the time to do it.
Mhm.
And so that's really the problem we solved. And I think, today you see this inflection point that was only accelerated in COVID. It's, you're working in front of a computer all day. You might be at home and, you go on Amazon, you can shop. Who's one of our customers, and I spend way too much money on Amazon. Then I log on to Netflix or Hulu, something like that. And then I get on like a Peloton here and you just have this digital experience in your life. And so now you go back to work and you're stuck sending Excel sheets. You're stuck on an email. You're combing through paper. You're calling vendors and you're just like, hey, there's got to be a better way. So if you're a leader of an organization, what do you mean by embrace technology? It just means trying new things. And the great thing about like software as a service is you don't have to sign up for, a $20 million deal that's 10 years long. You can sign up for a very small engagement, try it out, see if it works for your business, and then quickly kill it. Because it's a renewal business. It's like, renting a car or leasing a car. After that 1 year, you don't have to do it anymore if you don't like it and they don't earn your business. But I think too many organizations are stuck in like the status quo of keeping the lights on. And, what I see is that you have this inflection of you have a younger workforce. You have now people who are, first adopters trying new technology in their personal life that are like, hey, I don't want to just go back to work and be doing the same thing I've been doing for the last 5 years. And so, what you mean by success and, transformation is that people who are willing to try new technologies, let their team run with projects, see if it works for them and solves an actual business problem, whether it's, being more efficient, saving costs, et cetera. Those CPOs I see are in the driver's seat with their careers. And not only are they getting promoted, but they're also getting promoted internally in the organization. Like Tim Cook, who's, now he went from supply chain and now he's the CEO of Apple.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to add, Tarek, one thing that you touched on, but specifically a remote workforce environment has added a new dimension to procurement's challenge, right? Because workers are remote and they're experiencing these digital platforms, digital tools just in their everyday life. And they're expecting that same experience at work. I mean, we've often used the reference, we replicate the Amazon-like experience from a P2P perspective. And I think it more so today, it's the expectation coming from the business as well as the procurement, because they want to see technology. They want the advantages of machine learning, natural language processing to automate how they do work. There'll be a day that they just turn on their computer and there's a dashboard that tells them what they need to action versus having to comb through spreadsheets or email, to find what they need to do during the day.
So, Greg, the Magical CPO knows how to write a compelling business case for necessary investments. And you were able to do these investments in your career. So why were you successful and what do other people need to learn from that?
Tarek touched on it. It's brand awareness. It's having a brand inside the organization that you get things done. And that when you put a business case in front of the C-suite, that you get the payback. The IRR, the ROI, whatever the financial term, but that you achieve the outcome. We were on a webinar with Jeff Epstein, and Jeff made the point of force multiplier. When you have an organization that delivers return over return and drives more incremental savings or value beyond what they originally expected, you create a brand and it becomes much easier in those cases. As Tarek spoke about the complacent CPO, those are the individuals that don't have the brand awareness, that don't have the brand in order to develop the business case, because they're playing typically a compliance role. They're not bringing value back to the organization by leveraging technology or their people.
I will say, if you're trying to build a brand, though, there's no easier place to start than supply chain and procurement.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're buying things or services. And so if you're able to show, hey, I'm saving money, it's a bottom line versus many other technologies out there that are, harder to place an ROI or harder to place actual success on. So it's a really good place to start.
Yeah. And I think the other place is the third-party risk, is that you can mitigate risk events before they ever occur. Because the one thing that we keep telling people is that any one contract you put in place as a procurement or sourcing professional could literally take down the company if we find human trafficking or modern slavery, if we find money laundering, if we find that it's all fraught with cyber risk. And so third-party risk has been it seems to be the one that while the sky is falling, there's ways to hold up the sky by using technology to help mitigate those risks. So what do you think about that, Greg, on including that in some of these compelling business cases?
Well, Don, let me flip it on you. You tell a great story about a casino in Vegas that applied a thermometer to a fish tank. Why don't you share that story with the group, and then I'll add on to the comment.
Okay, so my scare tactic is a real story. So everyone knows Target, so we don't go there. But we have a mega casino operations, and one of their casinos is in Las Vegas. They have a fish tank, which is beautiful. And if you've been there, you've seen it. And of course, they're a casino, so they outsource their fish maintenance to a fish company of some sort. Well, they dropped a thermometer in so they could remotely check the temperature because these were very expensive fish. Well, somebody was able to hack through the thermometer into their bank vault. Now, money is being watched very closely by a casino, so that was quickly stopped. But what they weren't realizing is that when they hacked in, they got to all their high roller data. Talk about, you don't think about it. You say money's worth more than the high roller data. Those high rollers are the ones that bring in so much profits. But in there, we know who comes with their mistress, who wants what kind of alcohol, the stuff that you know about your high rollers to entice them to come back is enormous. And that information could take down the casino and lose their highest paid people that come to the casino on a regular basis, all because of a thermometer. So when you go to outsource fish maintenance, nobody thought of a cyber activity in that. And that was probably Tailspin direct. It was what, $15,000, $20,000 a year for the fish tank. It's not a big deal. They put the contract in place. Nobody thought twice. Never went in front of the CISO, never thought about cyber. That one contract could have taken them down. So
I don't think it just has to be on the security side though too, right? Like you saw Ericsson, not to put them under the bus, but the CEO came out, I think it was a couple months ago, and said they were, funding ISIS, and their stock dropped 20% in a day. So I don't think it just has to be solely on that. It has to be, the financial risk, the supplier validation. And that was somebody they were working with for 2 years. It's like, covering your own butt, for lack of better words, and being able to look at all the suppliers, but using your registered suppliers. And this is a great example when we're talking about technology, but it's like your team and procurement should be doing that. It shouldn't be trying to get the best price.
Exactly.
And it shouldn't be calling vendors using Excel. It's letting technology offload a lot of that manual work.
Exactly. As well as create visibility and control over what you're buying, how you're buying it. There's a number of horror stories. Mattel with red paint coming out of China, large retail organization similar to Don's story that was monitoring temperature in the store, and somebody hacked in and stole credit card data. So there's a number of horror stories. And just by having visibility and control of what you're buying and how you're buying, surfaces those opportunities. But there's so much minutia in the data. The only way to manage it is by applying machine learning, advanced technology to create those that visibility and control. So I'm always surprised, certainly given the diversity of companies that we deal with, that they're not hyper-focused on mitigating risk through technology, how they leverage technology to create that visibility and control.
I think there's a lot of buzzwords around technology also that scare people, or that they're like skeptical of. Like machine learning or AI is a great example of one when you use it all the time in your real life. And it's just like when you apply it to a business standpoint, people are, I think, somewhat taken aback to be like, how does this work in procurement, or how does this work in supply chain? When, you use Google every single day, and, it's ML to use Google search index, but you can do the same thing with your supplier database. You can go to your same suppliers to see who bought you this good or service, or even identify suppliers at a register that you might not think of. Just like you would to just go find, if you're into athletic leisure clothing, just to go find a new hoodie or new sweatpants near you. And I think if you take the same practicality of what happens in your personal life to how it relates to a business life, you can be really successful. But I think sometimes people are thrown off to say like, hey, this works here, it won't work here. And so, people who are willing to try things that are trying to solve from a business outcome, we usually see as the best successful executives.
Yep.
Absolutely. So Greg, when you talk about all of the imperatives that are facing today's CPO, you've got cost reduction, you've got risk mitigation, you've got digital transformation, you've got CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG, environmental, social, and governance, driving all of that is on the shoulders of the CPO. So the magic CPO, does he have a magic wand? How does he pull all this together?
Well, the path forward, in my opinion, is through advanced technologies, because to your earlier point, it elevates the individual to do the strategic, play the trusted advisory role, removing them from the heavy lift of running spend analysis, running sourcing events, et cetera. So the path forward has to be through advanced technologies, because the reality is most CFOs, chief operating officers, are not going to give you unlimited budget to add headcount. The CPOs operate under constraints. The sooner they realize these constraints are real and the expectations are only increasing, do more with less. They, in my opinion, and that's the art of the possible, is they have to leverage technology in order to deliver the right business outcomes. It's the only path forward.
Yeah, and the areas I would say immediately, I don't know how you can do sourcing without technology. I don't know how you can manage your tail without technology. And I certainly don't know how you manage your third-party risk. Human beings are so flawed and will miss so many aspects of, you could throw thousands of people at it, but why do that when there's a talent shortage? Smart people don't like to do dumb work, and technology exists. So it's mind-boggling to me why people aren't embracing this more quickly.
I think the other thing, though, is, one of the things I loved working with Greg on when he was on the supplier side, we were trying to sell to him, was, he was a really good leader. And people in his organization, like Nathan, he just let run with tasks, empowered them to make all the decisions, and I'll pass it over to Greg to talk more about it. But I feel like you built a culture where you let people fail and you were okay with failure. And it was just like, what did you learn from failing? And then here are the 3 other things that you succeeded on. So let's not worry about that at all. And, I think to your point with a talent shortage, it's the leaders who are able to let their team run with tasks, build things, not only build their brand internally, but also become leaders someday in the future. Those are the ones who are really successful moving forward, because, there's a million things you can try to play whack-a-mole with. And the more you can enable your team to put a big club in their hand and whack those moles, I think the more they'll succeed.
Yeah, the reality is, and I'll quote Michael Jansen at Everest Group when he was there, there's 2.4 million less workers entering the workforce every year, and it will only exponentially get more. So less workers, less qualified individuals to play the role. I don't know why companies aren't leveraging advanced technologies to fill that gap. Also, with the Great Resignation, the churn, you have a lot of institutional knowledge leaving organizations. And if it's not captured some way and leveraging advanced technologies, you have this brain drain occurring from organizations. So empowering the team in an effective way is you're able to retain talent, but you also need to invest, and to Tarek's point, give them the ability to fail fast. I love the expression fail fast. What it implies is you give them latitude to fail, accept failure is, accepted, as long as we learn from it and mitigate the exposure going forward, learn from those experiences.
Well, Tarek, you have built an amazing organization, and I am so excited at how great Fairmarkit is doing. And I hear nothing but incredible positive news about Fairmarkit. So congratulations to you and your co-founder and the rest of your team. But more importantly, congratulations for getting Greg on your team. That was a good strategic move.
I didn't build anything. It's our team that built it. And so, I always say that it's the company we build from this day forward. Everything in the past didn't matter. And so it's really a team effort. And I think, that goes back to what we were just talking about. But, I wouldn't be on this podcast if it wasn't for Greg. So here we are playing with Shaq.
That's great. So folks, we are out of time today, but gentlemen, I would love to invite you back to get a follow on to this conversation and see how much more magic we can sprinkle on top of these CPOs and see how many more magical CPOs you guys can create and we can create as an industry.
Thank you, Tarek. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Dwyane Wade.
Thank you, everybody. So stay tuned for another podcast coming to you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast through iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Want to nominate someone for an interview? Email us at info@sig.org.